Hey guys, welcome to the Rubin Report. I'm Dave Rubin. According to the paperwork, I've got Leeann Tweeden and Desi Doyen. Here we go. Okay, Ben Affleck, you may have heard of this guy. Apparently he's some kind of Hollywood actor. People are very excited that he's going to be the next Batman. He has been a big fundraiser politically, especially for the Democrats. But he did an interview in Playboy magazine, and it sounds like he's soured on the money in politics. Over time, I became disillusioned, mostly with the pernicious effect of money in politics. I realized it was about raising $56,000 through a couple dinners and those bundlers who bring in $1 million or $2 million. Those people are dedicated and they believe in what they're doing. I believe in why many of them are doing it. What I don't believe in is that we now have the need to do it. And for me personally, it started to feel gross. Okay, I'm pretty sure we can all get on board that. It's something we talk about here, especially at the Young Turks, all the time, money in politics, and it's a real problem. If you've lost Hollywood with money, well, that's what I'm saying. Is this a game changer? If you've lost a guy like Ben Affleck, who has raised a ton, I mean, he's pretty much one of the most outspoken celebrities they have. Sure. If you lost him, is this really a kind of sea change thing?
I'm kind of impressed that he knows the word pernicious. That's kind of cool. I mean,
how is my pronunciation?
I don't use pernicious in any sentences, really. I'm gonna have to up my game. Yeah. But you know, it's interesting that finally somebody like him that is very vocal speaks out about it now, because it is disgusting and gross across all spectrums. I think politics has gotten to that point where, you know, people will say, oh, Obama's back on the plane, he's almost out of office, and he's still fundraising. But it is kind of a gross, sort of slimy feeling when you know, oh, Obama's coming to Hollywood just to fundraise, just to go to a house and go home with $5 million. It's kind of like, you know, stop making traffic terrible in West LA. You know, people hate it.
And he literally did that 2 weeks ago in Beverly Hills, did a private fundraiser, and it's something like 50.
I mean, you know it's bad if you want to take a shower after you have dinner with these people because you feel so slimy.
Because you feel slimy. What do you make of this kind of thing? Because I think there's something interesting about Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, because, you know, Matt Damon's been a big proponent of public schools, but also sends his kid to private schools. So there's something like, as these guys grow up, they're learning the system is seriously broken.
And I'm glad that they are. I mean, it's taken a while, I guess, for some of this to dawn on some of the Hollywood folks about how actually wrong it is that our politics is so infused with money at every stage of the game. You know, I think that would be wonderful to get money out, but in order to get money out of our system, you have to elect people who will then be able to vote to get money out. And
term limits.
You know, there are differences about term limits. There are some problems that I have with it. You know, it tends to perpetuate the party boss system because people don't get experience and then they cannot stay in office long enough.
My husband and I had that conversation. I said four years for people in Congress. My husband goes, you know, let them have 8. They need time to do something, but then get them out.
So he would be for one election. So you get one cycle of 8 years and you can't run for re-election?
Right. Because then people do, I think a lot of people get into politics wanting to make a difference. People are engaged and they are like, I can do something for my community, and they're engaged about it, but then all of a sudden they realize they get in. I think maybe like Obama might be the same way. You get in, you think, oh, I'm going to do these things, I'm going to be president, and then you realize it's the same, the cog and wheel, you know, nothing really changes, and it's all about money, and it's all about, you know, oh, well, if I want this passed, then I have to do this and this and this, and it's kind of, it isn't the ideal situation everybody thinks it's going to be when they get in, and then money is corrupt. It's like Frodo in the Ring. You're like, oh, I gotta keep the power.
But when you have term limits, or you know, that doesn't actually get money out. I mean, what you need to do is you have to be able to elect those people who will then promise and actually follow through on voting to get these changes made into the system.
Where are those people? Because we used to.
They exist, but they can't rise above the din of the money. You know, there are folks who are running in congressional districts and in school board races all around, but because money is so deeply infused, I mean, even with term limits, I don't see how that pulls it out.
I think with term limits, at least it's a step in the right direction that people can, you realize that they're not just going to sit there and, you know, a year before a re-election, they're just going to pander to whoever is going to give them the most money, and then they just keep doing the same things even though they promised to do something else.
Yeah, don't you guys wonder, like, when they're supposed to be working, You know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, Obama ran for re-election. That whole last year of his first term was devoted to getting re-elected. Who's running the show? I always wonder that. Like, you're supposed to have a job, I think, as a politician. You're supposed to have a job. But yet, half your term ends up becoming about re-election. Even now, he's raising money. He's not running for re-election, obviously, but he's still raising money for the DNC. So it just sort of never
The crazies
ends.
in the asylum are running the country.
Running the show. But seriously, why don't we ever talk about campaign finance anymore? We used to have something, McCain-Feingold. I mean, there was things that were trying to change, but literally it's not part of the national discussion at all.
Oh, I think it's just because it's been taken over so completely. I mean, when you have the oligarchy that we have right now, I mean, I don't think anybody will disagree with me really on that. But when you have that kind of that level of oligarchy and money in politics, they've really infiltrated at all levels. You know, we have the ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, doing the template legislation that has been put throughout Republican legislatures throughout the country that have helped to cement this corporate control and this sort of the billionaires influencing pretty much everything that actually can get done because they have the money. And then you have somebody like Tom Steyer, the hedge fund billionaire, who's now decided to step in because he realizes climate change is a deeply important issue, and so he's putting his money to work. Michael Bloomberg putting his money to work. We got Bloomberg and we've got Steyer, we've got billionaire action on, their billionaire on billionaire action is what we're working on. And I don't know if that's actually going to work. If they're going to be able to get those people elected and over that hump of campaign financing to get to the congressional election so that they can vote for these things. Yeah, but
politics and politicians are all about money. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, nothing, Green Party, whatever, it's all money, and they're all the same.
Right.
I mean, people talk about Democrat and Republicans, and really when you look at on the broad spectrum, sure, maybe you're like, okay, there's differences between the two. Really, when you look at it with a microscope, there's really no difference. They're all about money. They all are rich. They're all are, you know.
Well, that also is proven all the time when you see who Wall Street gives money to. It's not that they give 80% to Republicans and 20% to Democrats. It's always around 49 and 51% because they're playing both sides.
Of course.
Constantly.
Of course. And those people all have, you know, stocks on Wall Street. I mean, you know, so it's not like the Democrats over there going, oh no, we have no money invested in the stock market. We have no vested interest in Wall Street. Come on, they all do.
Right.
Well, I actually know some individuals who are just regular people who decided that they
like
wanted to try. Yeah, regular people. I mean, that's what I mean. You know, middle class folks who are not wealthy, who are not folks who are billionaires or even millionaires or even thousandaires, who tried to run for Congress. And the barriers to entry are very high. Part of that is set by your state legislature. You have to have $10,000 just to file in some of these states or more. Yeah. And with those kinds of barriers to entry for a regular person to then be able to rise above the din of the money that is influencing everybody else.
So it starts right there that they have to start raising that money.
To me, they're not all the same. I mean, I know people. I know physical individuals who have tried to do this, and it's extremely difficult.
Right. So maybe the ones that rise up ultimately become all the same, but at the grassroots level, they're obviously different.
At the grassroots level, the people that we would need to get elected and in place in order to put the judges in place who say corporations are not people, in order to get, you know, the constitutional amendments, those all spin on the House of Representatives.
Yeah, okay, so final thought on this, which you just gave me a perfect segue for, is how much of this should we blame on the Supreme Court and the Citizens United ruling, because corporations can now give, they had back channel ways to do it, but now we've completely opened it up, and so should we be blaming the Supreme Court for this situation that we're in now?
I blame everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Government, obviously we need government for democracy and to make the laws and the rules and stuff like that. And there's so many rules and things that we have to follow and do that it just, you almost wish you could start over and just start with a clean template and say, this is what we need to do, and you don't have to do a million things to do this, or, you know, it just, I don't know, I think we need the Supreme Court, and rulings like that, you kind of shake your head and go, really? Now you're going to make it easy for corporations to do these things that they were hiding to do before? I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Bring us home, Desi.
I think the Supreme Court is the fulcrum. You know, it is the pivot on which everything is going to turn, and you know, they're sort of the last ditch, the wall, the guardrail, if you want to use another metaphor, that keeps us from sliding completely into complete takeover
by corporations. Whether you agree with their decisions or not.
Yeah, but so that's I think where the crux of it lies, because these people, you know, have a lifetime appointment. So it really does matter who's in the Senate to approve the person, who is the person in the presidential office to nominate the people that we're going to see, and we see the fruits of you know, Scalia and Alito and Thomas. It leaves us in a place where we are extremely vulnerable to the kinds of overtaking, the kinds of systems that overtake us, that make us in a very, very difficult place.
Maybe they need limits too.
Well,
maybe they do. That's a whole other topic. That's a whole other topic which we'll deal with maybe next week. We'll see. All right, let's talk about our friends over at the NSA. They're not just reading your emails and tracking your phone calls. They're also following what video games you play, which is why I'm happy that I'm still on Sega Genesis playing Ghouls and Ghosts. They are tracking you on World of Warcraft, Second Life, and a bunch of other online games. This is according to the New York Times, The Guardian, and ProPublica. The NSA and its British counterpart, which is the GCHQ, the UK's government communications headquarters. I think that's where James Bond used to work, if I'm not mistaken. They are spying across gamers all over the world because it's sort of they believe it to be sort of a secret zone that terrorists can talk to each other, not just guys sitting in a basement getting fatter and playing games. Spy agencies are worried that these games serve as a good cover for terrorists to use in-game messaging systems to swap information, recruit other users, or carry out virtual weapons training. So that's two things. They can chat with each other in the games, and by playing the games, you might learn how to use an actual real weapon. And the NSA was extracting World of Warcraft data, trying to tie specific accounts and characters to Islamic extremism and arms-dealing efforts. I mean, this sounds completely crazy. The GCHQ had successfully been able to get the discussions between different game players on Xbox Live, and so many US spies were roaming around Second Life that a special deconfliction unit was set up to prevent them from stepping on each other's toes. I mean, really, think about that. We've got so many people spying that they're spying on each other. This is becoming spy versus spy. Is this just like another one of these things where it's first it was our emails, then our buddy lists, then our phone calls, and our FaceTime video chats? And now, of course, this was just the next logical step, right?
Oh, well, yes, this is what they've wanted all along, this total information awareness, you know, and they want to be able to infiltrate every single corner of every single pixel everywhere throughout the entire world because that's what they believe is important. Also, I think they want to play video games at work, but
I really believe that. Like, I bet you that a good percentage of these guys are literally just playing games all day.
Sure, why not? They're wandering around Second Life just to see if they can bump into each other, and of course, they're only bumping into other spies. And I think what's important about this is that they still have yet, as far as the paperwork shows, they still have yet to prove that there's any evidence of this activity going on.
Yeah. So, okay, it goes from one thing to another. I mean, I'm guessing you're not surprised by this.
I'm not surprised, and I almost wish I didn't know. You know, what I don't know is not going to hurt me if they're watching me play video games, whatever. I'm not doing anything wrong, but it is. I mean, it's like Big Brother.
I know people are going to jump all over you for saying that. Well, if I'm not doing anything wrong.
Well, we're right, of course, but I really don't care if they're, you know, listening to my phone calls or reading my emails. I have nothing to hide, but I understand they're, you know, invading our privacy. At what point is the net too big to protect us on a larger scale? Well, we're doing this for the good of everyone. We got to maybe read your emails and fish through your phone calls because we're trying to find the terrorists that could be taking down, you know, we could have another 9/11.
Right.
I get it.
Even though there's no evidence.
It's no, right, of course. Yeah. But then if they don't do something, then people are going to be like, well, you weren't doing enough.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, yeah, the incentive is obviously none of us want to find out that that some huge major attack happens and it could have been prevented if only somebody had been wandering around Second Life. Right. You know, nobody wants that.
How crazy that sounds.
Well, I know.
But yes.
So
there is going to be blame
somebody's going to get blamed if something does happen.
Sure,
absolutely.
So we're always dealing in the what if that happens? Well, we should have been doing something.
And that is the justification for many things. I think the other side of it, and you know, granted, you know, none of us were probably doing anything to be afraid of in so many words, but that's not the issue. The issue is abuse of power.
Sure.
You know, the abuse of this information to maliciously prosecute people or maliciously blackmail people because you know things about them in this life that they have the expectation of privacy. So.
Right. And it was also broke last week that they were tracking potential terrorists. They were tracking their porn use because they felt they could then use that as propaganda because it shows that they're not honest and they're not really.
They say that it's for terrorists, but do we actually know that that's what they were looking at? They weren't looking at congressmen, for example. They weren't looking at political opponents.
Right, because Because you can blackmail literally anyone.
It is actually happening in the world right now. I mean, with Don Siegelman, former governor of Alabama, in prison now, a political prosecution. So, look it up. You can get more information on that. But he's a direct person that you can look at.
Watching porn, to me, that's only a good thing.
Because I think,
right, and they're distracted, they're relaxed. I think they probably will have a lot less angst and maybe want to keep living instead of blowing themselves up along with all their other people.
Well, that's the thing. But they were saying that this is the way. If you can find out what porn they watch, then we can humiliate them, and that hurts the cause. That was the argument. But how much do the companies that make the video games, Microsoft, let's say, who makes Xbox, how much responsibility do they have to actually protect the virtual world that they're making?
I think they're more interested in protecting their profits and protecting the kinds of legislation that will help them maximize their profits. I think they really don't particularly care whether or not, gamers don't trust them anymore.
At some point, I think if you don't want to be on the radar, do not be on the radar. Don't have a cell phone. Don't play online. Don't use the World Wide Web. Go live in a cabin in Alaska where you go out and hunt your own food. You don't have cable service. You know what I mean?
The Sarah Palin route.
Well, sure. Exactly. I was just watching Survival or something on Nat Geo, and there was a guy that had been living out literally in remote forests, hadn't seen people. You had to be like, hey, I'm friendly. Is it okay if I come towards your house? Because he chooses to live out in the middle of nowhere and not be connected to anything. So I'm just saying that as a person that if you're on a phone, it can be monitored. If you're on the internet, it can be monitored. If you're on a game box that's connected to the world, you want to play some random dude in Norway, then that there's a possibility that somebody can tap in or that somebody could be watching or listening. And
there's a possibility, but I don't see why we have to put up with that.
So that's the final question on this is what do we do? Because as I started this, every week, so you think the answer is just to shut it down altogether, but I don't know how realistic that is.
Right.
We all have this stuff. Human progress moves.
You can't have a job without having a cell phone.
Right, you can't function in society really without this. So is there minor steps that we can actually take to fight this growing encroachment on our
freedom?
It's
what happens. It's a pendulum, and it happens every couple of decades here in the United States. Eisenhower warned us about this. The military-industrial complex. Well, it's the military intelligence-industrial complex now. We're spending a ton of money on these guys to play in video games, but we don't happen to have money for food stamps. We don't happen to have money for veterans. This is the kind of bullshit we have to deal with. I think part of it starts with electing the right people to Congress and also making sure that we put in place the kinds of investigations and then the kinds of controls that we've put in place before. It's not like we haven't had this conversation in this country before. It's just had taken a different tack.
Yeah. All right. Perfect wrap up for that one, and also a perfect segue because let's talk about tech addiction. Note, I am not tweeting right now, believe it or not. But yeah, people are becoming addicted to all the technology, the Twitter and the Facebook, and I know the kids are on the Snapchat and all that stuff. A software firm, FrontRage, surveyed more than 800 smartphone users from all over the world to see how they felt about technology usage and addiction. 53% of people feel anxious when they can't use their phone. I think we've all felt that a little bit. There was a 39% increase in frustration levels when they couldn't check their emails or social networks, and were 79% more anxious when they couldn't call or text people. 45% use their phones at least once an hour, and 66% admitted they couldn't go a day without their gadgets.
I think some of those numbers are low.
Really?
Yes.
That's wild because they're actually pretty high, but I definitely can see the argument for that seems low.
I mean, you use your phone once an hour. I think I'm looking at it every few, even though I would say yes, I'm a little bit addicted, but if I left my phone at home, oh, whoops, I've left my phone at home, and you just have to deal with it. Sure, you're thinking, oh, am I missing a call? Gosh, I should check my emails. But one of my girlfriends, Brandy, she is constantly on her phone, and I'm like, I think you need to put that down because it's like, really,
all the time, right?
All the time, and it's a little annoying. You've been at dinners where people go, put them in the bowl, and everybody has to take out their cell phones, and the first person who reaches for their phone has to pay for dinner.
Yeah, so I was at a party this weekend, and I did that, and a couple other people, we all stacked up our phones, and we were present and aware, and we had full
you had a
conversations and made eye contact with each other.
It was possible.
It was powerful. But really, what do we do about this? Because we're all suffering from it. I mean, I see this all the time. Back in the day, if you were watching a sports game, even something so simple, you'd watch a game, and you could watch with some friends or by yourself, and that's it. But now it's like everyone's even tweeting sports games. Like, he scored. Great, I saw that too.
You really need to tweet about
that. Is there
Right.
something going on here? I'm thinking this stuff is really starting to affect our brains and our, feedback and all that kind of thing.
There's some indication that it is actually affecting our brains. So there's a lot of cognitive science where they followed, how they do tests with rats, experiments with rats where they give them a treat and then they show that the little electrodes in their brain show that the reward center lights up. And there was another study that I had read a while ago about people who check with Facebook, and they get the same lighting up part of their brain. The reward center lights up every time they check Facebook. So they think that it has to do something that has to do with our need to have that instant gratification, and the more we get accustomed to having instant gratification, it becomes like a drug. It has the same influence as something like cocaine does.
And it's instant. I mean, I remember,
and we're all doing it, so it's not shamed. It's not like something that you do privately.
I just think it's something in this culture that all of a sudden we're now the internet-based, instant, at your fingertips information people. It's just the way it is. I mean, there's that new baby seat that has the attachment for the iPad for babies. So even though babies should not be looking at a screen for 2 years of their life, and I have a 3-month-old, and sometimes I'll pick up my phone if somebody's calling or something, and I see him looking at the bright light, and I'm like, no. I try to turn it away from him. But I mean, children, I see little kids that can't even talk yet, and they know how to unlock their mom's phone. But what are you going to do? That's technology today, and that is going to be their life and their world. They've never. I remember going to school and learning how to do long form, how to log into a computer in like middle school. Now kids have known swipe technology since they were born, and that's just going to be their life. Yeah,
and have you seen these videos where these kids, because they're on the iPads all the time, they'll even see like a fish tank, something actually real, and they can't, and they're trying to swipe fish,
or
and people,
TV.
or a TV, and people think it's so cute, but it's actually dangerous.
When you think about that, you're like, that's scary.
And it takes awareness, I think. You ask, what do we do about this? I think a lot of that has to do parenting, actual parenting, and awareness. And that's a very difficult thing. To get that awareness out to parents, it's taken this long for us to have PSAs that tell parents how to feed their children fruits and vegetables, and it's, hey, you're the boss of the TV. Eventually, I think, as a society, we tend to just run head first into the new technologies without figuring out what the social aspects of it are. So we tend to find out too late.
I think it might take a long time. It might take a generation to figure out.
Which is really unfortunate, because we're going to have a lot of ADD, short attention span kids coming up.
And then you prescribe Adderall to all of them. I mean, then it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. We're an over-medicated society, so you create a situation where people want instant gratification all the time. Then they can't pay attention to anything, so you give them a drug for that, and then
a pill with an instant issue, with an instant response, rather than actually like finding ways to adjust our behaviors.
Yeah, it's actually.
But I think I find now that, in the mornings I used to log on to a website. I stopped watching television news a long time ago because they're so behind. And you'd watch, you'd look up all your sites online. And now I just go to Twitter because I follow all the news things, and you see breaking news as it happens. It is addictive. Because the first thing I wake up in the morning, I grab my phone and I'm like, oh my God, that's happened. Oh, that person just died. Oh, that's tragic. I mean, but that's how you're finding it, like right then and now. I mean, celebrities don't even need publicists anymore because they just go make their own a statement on Twitter or Facebook. And
so there's obviously good in it, that kind of thing, and you can get news quickly and we can share it, but that is the addictive quality of it. So have you guys ever had the phantom buzz?
Of course.
So like,
or you hear a phone and you're like, is that me? And my husband's like, no, that was my phone. I'm like,
have you had that too? Where you so I really believe it's doing things that it's where you suddenly think your phone is vibrating and then you realize it's not even in your pocket. I mean, these are things that are actually happening, and we joke about it, but it's actually.
Well, I think the interesting thing, if I remember from that study that they just did, that when people went without their devices for a little while, they did find that after I think reaching a peak of anxiety, they actually relaxed and they put it down. They were very proud of themselves for not picking it up again. And I think that shows that it can work, just simple behavior adjustments.
My girlfriend and I joke that sometimes, you grab everything when you're leaving the house, you grab your purse, you grab your keys, you're like, okay, do I have everything? And you walk out and you're like, wait a minute. Where's my phone? And we joke that it's our oxygen, because you take 2 steps and you go, where's my phone? I can't breathe without it. And you have to run back in and grab your phone before you even get in the car. I mean, I realize it as I'm walking out the door. I don't even get to 5 minutes later and go, do I have my phone? No, it's like an instant.
It's immediate.
Where is it?
Is this one of these things where it's like everyone always wants to harken back to another time? It's sort of like Midnight in Paris. You always think something that you didn't live through is better than what you're living through. But think about how fundamentally different if you were to take the life of someone growing up in the 1950s versus what's happening now. I mean, this genuinely is going to change everything about humanity and how we operate with each other, right?
I believe you're right about that.
Well, it's already changed. I mean,
it's already done.
I remember going to concerts. You know, you would go. It's like going to the Staples Center, and you're like, you wouldn't be like, hey, where are you? Oh yeah, I see you walking towards me. Okay, cool. Hey, great. And then you hang up the phone, and you're already face to face.
Right.
I remember it's like, okay, as soon as the concert's done, I'll meet you by the bathroom at Hall D in the mezzanine level, and just stay there. Don't move. You know, and you would just sit there and you would wait for somebody because beforehand you would talk about where you were going to meet. You didn't have cell phones. You couldn't text. You didn't know where anybody was.
How did we ever meet anyone for dinner? I have no idea. Just for the record, though, I do want to say that I've been basically taking Sundays off Twitter.
Good for you.
Basically.
You know,
yeah, but still.
5 or 10 or 20 tweets, but that's it.
Are you having any phantom buzzing?
Oh, it's constant. I'm having it right now, constantly. All right, let's talk about another world, Mars. This Mars One operation, I think this is really, really cool. So this is a project that's aiming to send volunteers on a one-way trip to Mars. You will die on Mars if you want to go. It's going to be the first private unmanned mission to the Red Planet. So there's two things. We're going to send people one way, and they're building a reality show around that, and it's going to be this giant crowd-funded thing, pretty cool. And then they're also sending unmanned missions there to do some other stuff. Okay, so Mars One has secured Lockheed Martin Space Systems and Surrey Satellite Technology for an unmanned mission launching in 2018, which involves a robotic lander and a communications satellite. So basically, they're going to set up some stuff so that when these people get to Mars, there's something there. The unmanned mission will also carry the winning projects from an experiment contest because they're going to be building this giant reality show around it. It's going to be the first privately funded planetary exploration mission. Funding will come from sponsorships, exclusive partnerships, the reality TV show, and Indiegogo. We know a little something about that around here at TYT. The trip takes about 7 months. The first pioneers could land on Mars in about 2025. And after the first humans arrive in 2025, the plan is to send additional crews every 2 years. But again, once you get there, you cannot come back. This is what the colony eventually will look like, certainly not the day they get there. Now we've got a little bit of the habitat. That looks pretty good, right? Like very 2001-ish. So this whole thing I think is really cool, and you know, we were just talking about all the social media stuff, but this seems like technology that's actually good in pushing the frontiers of what humans are capable of doing. Would either one of you like to go on a one-way trip to Mars? Desi?
Absolutely not.
No? You don't want to do it? Neither one of you?
No, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. But also, I would want to make sure that you actually survive the trip. And you know, there's so many issues.
So you'd be on the second or third wave? You'll let the guinea pigs go first?
Yeah, let the guinea pigs go first, because there's so many issues with this particular trip that they're planning, so I'm not exactly sure whether or not they really will get there. This particular, the privately funded with the reality show is a great way to make money, but I don't know if they actually will have the capability to get the technology in place to do it. I mean, it's really difficult to land on Mars. You've got radiation issues, crossing and living on Mars. You've got issues with food, with water, with whatever you're going to carry for your fuel. You know, there are all kinds there's tons of stuff. There was a big Mars conference back in May, and there's some great articles that were written about all of the specific difficulties of trying to land a payload with humans on it on Mars. And right now it can't be done. I think it'd be great if they could figure out how to do it.
Right. So talking about it, so it's great. I mean, it's working.
Yeah. It's working already.
Right. And they've gotten people, you know, you had to, I think, pay 40 or 50 bucks in order to be one of the people to apply to go on Mars. So that was a great money-making opportunity
and
right there.
Literally hundreds of thousands of people, over 200,000 people applied for this. So before we get into the specifics of what they're going to do on Mars, what do you make of the people that are willing to do this? That someone's going to say, I will potentially die en route, potentially live there for a year and die of loneliness or lack of oxygen? Like, what do you make of the person that can do it?
To me, my first reaction is to think, who is going to go? And I think, well, they're probably not going to get scientists or people like that would actually be able to study and to translate what it is that they're seeing and communicate every day back.
Like a crazy cowboy, like a space cowboy.
Well, is it going to be, you know, people in prison? Is it going to be people that have a terminal illness? Is it going to be people that want a death wish? I mean,
so you don't think there's just a scientist that says, I believe in in this so much.
That I'm willing to die for.
Right, because usually scientists have dedicated their whole lives. I doubt they're going to dedicate maybe a few years of their life and then die off when it just doesn't seem real to me. Like you said, maybe if people go and it's successful and people are living there, and then maybe they do find a way to get them back off and back to Earth, then maybe, sure, you're going to have the scientists and the people that go up there that can go, oh, okay, I can go up there for 4 months like space station and do some research and we'll come back, you know. But a one-way ticket, no, who's going to bury you? Who's going to who's going to want to be there?
The second wave guy is going to bury you. They're going to send a ditch digger on the second wave, I think. But have you guys seen the movie Contact with Jodie Foster? Yes. So you remember Matthew McConaughey says to her before she goes on the trip, he says, why you? Why you? And she says, well, this could be the most powerfully impactful moment in human civilization. So I do think there are some scientists that would be willing to do it. I mean, I sort of want to see what happens with the show. You know, let's see what happens with this thing.
But didn't they say in the article that people who donate to Indiegogo has some say on what happens in the reality show? So you can tell the guy, hey, you go walk outside without your mask on. Let's see what happens.
Right, they're going to have punked on Mars. So let's talk about that. So I think one of the things that's really cool about this isn't just the government deciding to do this. This is privately funded, and NASA's going to get involved in some ways, and I'm sure, they have to be, and of course all the Russian space station, all that, and the international thing and everything. But I think the idea of privately funding something and then building a reality show around it, this seems like, the world crowdsourcing something, which I think actually is pretty cool.
That model, using this particular thing as a model for, hey, how do we undergo major projects that have a global backing behind them? That's a great idea. Yeah. But I can think of other things that are probably more plausible that it would actually go for. Not
things
that
this isn't on
this planet, maybe some actual difficult problems and challenges that we have to deal with, and I'm sure there are a couple that we can think of that money would go well for. I'm glad that they're doing this. I think it excites people about STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. It excites kids. I don't know that these are the right people to do it, but at least they're getting the conversation going. Yeah. And so for that, I'm glad that they're doing it.
So joking aside about what's going to happen to the people when they get up there, every science fiction movie ever, from 2011, Alien, I mean, the list goes on, about these people exploring the frontiers of space, they always end poorly.
Oh,
they always, they meet an alien that kills them, or they go crazy, or they start seeing things, Prometheus. I mean, literally every movie. So have we already sort of have our imaginations already predicted how this whole thing will play out?
Obviously, if it's starting with a one-way ticket, it is not going to end well. Right. So if you're not that smart to even think down the line that it could end well, then you have an issue. But then maybe you should go. But I think I do hate the word reality television show, because I think of Snooki and Dancing with the Stars. No, it's almost like
I know. Can we nominate some people?
Some people would actually fund that.
Well, let's think. If we're doing a one-way trip, who should we send? Chris Brown.
Carl
Rove. Give me one more. And the Koch brothers. One more. Come on. Snooki would be a good one. All right.
Some of those reality people, but I think it's more of a documentary than a reality show. When you think of the word reality, I think of people sleeping with each other and running out on Mars in the middle of the night, drunk, and
that would be interesting to watch, though.
That would be something. All right. Well, there's obviously going to be plenty. We could send Bieber too. There's going to be plenty more to talk about that. So we will cover it from now until they get there in 2025. Okay, let's move on to McDonald's. They had another major gaffe. So McDonald's has this McDonald's McResource line, because they put Mick in front of everything. It's brilliant. And this is where they give tips, lifestyle tidbits, to assist their employees. And NBC News checked out the site last week and found this article dedicated to tipping service that their employees should give to the people that are serving them during the holidays. So this is what McDonald's wants their employees to be giving to their employees. For your au pair, a gift from your family, or 1 week's pay, plus a small gift from your child. For your housekeeper, 1 day's pay. Your pool cleaner, because most people making the $7 and change at McDonald's have a pool, cost of one cleaning. The article also lists holiday tipping pointers for your dog walker, your massage therapist, of course, and your personal fitness trainer. Just a little bit more about numbers and money in McDonald's. CEO James Skinner made about $14 million last year. Okay, that's actually not crazy amount in the world of CEOs, but it is a lot, obviously. But that breaks down to $9,247 per hour. Do you know how long it would take the average McDonald's worker who makes $7.73 to make that? A cool 4 months. Yeah, 4 months.
And
this guy makes in one
employee, not
a full-time employee.
And a lot of McDonald's workers are part-time employees. That would take 8 months.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just start with that part of it, and then we'll get into the specifics of this tidbit thing. The money breakdown, and the CEO is making this crazy amount, and we see every year it gets worse and worse. The disparity between the CEO pay and the average worker pay just gets worse and worse. Is there anything we can do to stop this? I guess they're trying. Even just this last week, we had these protests.
Sure, they're trying to get at least $15 an hour. I mean, your Big Mac's going to go up in price a little bit because they're not. Certainly, they don't want to take away his money, his salary,
or shareholder profit.
Sure, exactly. It's shareholder profit, salaries for people that are obviously this guy's making $14 million and somebody's trying to survive with their nanny, with the dog walker, their pool, and their fitness trainer while they're not working at McDonald's, obviously.
Yeah.
It's insane. These people obviously did not look before, McDonald's, well, it was a third-party person that put this on our website. We just didn't look at it. But who was the third-party person thinking that McDonald's workers had an au pair?
All right, so we'll get to the specifics of this ridiculous thing in a second. But what can we do about this CEO to average worker pay situation?
I think it starts with the federal minimum wage. That's like a beginning place, because we have so many people to lift out of poverty and to help those people actually participate in the economy. And when they participate in the economy, they're more likely to vote. And by voting and making sure that people who actually care about them and actually work for them and actually share their values get into office, to make sure that when we have incentives and subsidies that are being given away to corporations that Congress votes on, that those people don't let those subsidies go through.
Right. And what would you argue to the crazy capitalists, the purists, who would say, well, if you do that, then the dollar menu is going to disappear and they're going to fire everybody and replace them all with robots? What's the argument?
It's absolute bullshit. There is no economic data that proves that. The economic data shows that when you lift people out of poverty into the middle class, that it actually helps the economy, because that money gets circulated throughout the economy. Wealthy people, CEOs, they don't buy stuff. What they do is they maybe will buy some luxury items, but they'll invest the rest, and it doesn't get circulated in the economy. When people are at the middle class or lower, I think it's something like the vast majority of Americans make $60,000 a year or less. That's a lot of folks who will immediately put that money back into the economy. So when you treat labor as an expense rather than an asset, that is, I think, the place where capitalism falters, and unfettered capitalism actually is a detriment to society.
Okay, so now let's talk about the McResource thing itself, because obviously this is completely insane, and yes, they're saying it was a third party, but they still put it on their website. It reminded me—
They're still responsible.
They're still responsible. It reminded me of the thing, do you see a couple weeks ago, that Walmart store had a bin.
Give away food.
Yeah, they wanted people to help other Walmart employees. Meanwhile, the two owners, the sisters that own Walmart, are the 2 or 3 richest people in America, or something like that. I mean, really, really crazy stuff. So is there just really some disconnect between the corporate level of these companies like McDonald's and then what is really happening on the ground, that this could even happen?
Well, of course, I think there is disconnect, but there's also people probably don't really give a shit about their jobs. We're making a list of things to do for how to tip for the holidays, and they just put it on the site without even, it's like they don't even care to look and go, this probably doesn't fit with the McDonald's employee. Let's adjust it or change it, because God forbid, that might take some work for them to maybe make another list than the one that they already created and using that template,
Okay, so I think that's very legit, that everyone sees this and you want to get crazy. See what McDonald's is doing, but I do think it's very possible that what you're saying is right, that this is just some mid-level person not doing their—
that's not being paid. Who had to put this together from stuff that they found on the internet.
Yeah. So the inequality thing, is there anything else we can do? Forgetting the fast food, but just the general inequality thing. Obama said,
food at home?
Make your own food at home. I guess that's, well, people always say that if you keep that food low, it's that the lower poorer people need that food, which I'm always not so sure that that's true, because for the $8 that you spend at McDonald's to get a Big Mac meal or whatever it is, you could go to Trader Joe's and still get a decently healthy meal for $8, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at, say, our farm system, we subsidize food processors. We subsidize commodities that actually then make ingredients cheap for the manufactured food industry, and we don't give any assistance whatsoever to the organics or the fruits and vegetables people. Those farmers don't get that help.
Well, it's a problem when you can get a Big Mac meal for $2.99 with a large Coke, with fries that are fried, and then you want a salad that's kind of healthy that maybe has some fresh vegetables on it with a side of fruit, and it's $10. So you can see that there's an issue.
So you vote with your dollar. And I think that you share the information with everybody in your network, because that's how it works. You tell your friends and family. You make sure that they understand what the issues actually are. That cheap food comes at a price, and it doesn't come at a price that's good for you. Of course, they're going to need cheap food.
I think a lot of people are educated, and they've seen all the videos of how they process food and stuff, and they still go, well, Taco Bell, I can still get out with a bag of food for $3.
I think a lot fewer people are actually educated about it than we realize. There have been some recent polls that show a lot of folks really don't know about these issues because they're too busy trying to make ends meet and raise their kids and get a good night's sleep so they can get up again and do it all tomorrow, and they don't really have all that information.
And
so
that's exactly
that information.
And that's exactly why we've talked many times here about all these corn subsidies. So then they put high fructose corn syrup in everything. So that sugar is actually too expensive for Coke to put in Coke. You're drinking corn, people. Corn. Yeah, okay. But let's talk about some other things that you might be drinking. This is good if you're an alcoholic in Amsterdam. A new program in Amsterdam is literally paying alcoholics with beer to clean up trash off the streets. It's a privately created program, but the government is funding some of it. In exchange for cleaning litter off the streets, workers get 2 beers before work at 9 a.m., 2 beers at lunch, 2 beers after work, half a packet of rolling tobacco. So even if you didn't have a tobacco problem before, you will have one now. You do get a free lunch, which is nice. 10 euros a day, which is about $13.55. So yeah, you could be an alcoholic because of vodka or gin, but you're just getting beer, according to this. All right, I know we're gonna have a lot of funny stuff on this, but are they onto something here? That they're taking these people and making them productive, even though they're using their addiction, which obviously is kind of sick.
Yeah, but reading the story, a lot of times though, people that are addicted are going to be addicted no matter what you do. So it kind of gives them something. One guy said, "Sure, I know I'm an alcoholic, but at least I have a job now, so it gives me some pride." I commend them for trying to do something. They tried to do other programs where they up security at the parks to clear out the drunks, just laying on the park benches and laying on the grass, drinking and being drunk all day. Well, at least now maybe they've gotten them down to where we'll give them a couple beers and they'll walk around and actually do something instead of laying around all day being a nuisance to the rest of society. I don't know if it's the greatest thing, but I commend them for doing something. I don't find it that bad. I'm not offended by it too bad. I mean, maybe there's better ways, but where is somebody else making the better way or coming up with a better idea?
Clearly haven't come up with a better idea.
But is there no way to incentivize good behavior? You know what I mean? We're just reinforcing
what they're doing. That is what they're
doing.
doing. Actually, I mean, they're taking folks who have an addiction and they're saying, okay, these other issues are not working. Kicking you out of the park means you just move to a different place. But actually paying you to clean up your park and to have a job that you can give back to your community seems to be working. I mean, the proof is in the pudding.
And even if they did pay them money or euros, they're gonna go take the money and go right to the liquor store and buy the beer themselves anyway. So they're just paying them, they're just taking out the money middle part and paying them. And if you don't smoke, they're gonna use that tobacco as bartering, I'm sure. They're gonna barter with it. But one guy did say, so there is a little bit of good that comes from the story. One guy said, well, I usually drink hard liquor, but You know, now I just drink beer.
Right, and so
that's a little bit better.
Right.
And also, when I looked at when you read further more about this particular program that they have going, you know, one of the guys said something that I thought was really heartbreaking. He's like, you know, I guarantee you look around at any of the guys sitting around this table, and we all have our own little backpack of misery that we carry around every day. This gives us a chance. This gives us hope. It gives us a path out of this.
Right, but aren't we also then, or aren't they also then filling that backpack because they're still enabling the action that they're trying to quit?
You're now thinking of a perfect society. Then we'd have no alcoholics, no drunks, no heroin addicts, no coke users, no marijuana addicts. I mean, that really is trying to make something very clean that is never going to be, you know, unless we really can completely cure alcoholism or mental health issues or drug addiction. But that's not going to go away anytime soon. I think you're trying to make a nice little bow that is not reality. You know what I mean?
Well, and it also takes care of other ills. For example, when you have heroin addicts who are given free methadone just to basically, you know, stay off the streets and not engage in criminal activity, you know, that is an external benefit to this particular policy that does come from enabling these people. So, you know, there are, I think, trade-offs that come with this. If it's a policy that works and actually helps these people, you know, maybe move out of where they were and to a place where they're actually participating and giving back.
It's not ideal, but it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah, it's practical.
Do you think this could ever work, something like this could ever work in the United States? Because think about it, right now, state by state, weed is getting legalized, and I think in a couple of years it'll be probably legalized countrywide, and it'll be fine, and everyone will go, oh, that wasn't such a big deal, sort of like gay marriage. Amsterdam obviously has had marijuana legal for many, many years, although it's actually a little harder now to get than it used to be. But is this just the next natural step of trying to deal with these vices, so to speak, in sort of more mature ways,
If you're dealing with something in a more practical, pragmatic way that actually accomplishes something, no, I don't think we'll ever have that here. Sorry, I don't. You know, because I don't think we're going to do that.
Too many laws. Well, how bad of an alcoholic are you? Do you make too much money for us to give you free beer? Well, you could be doing this job, and there would be too many problems and issues to just say, okay, you're an alcoholic. Well, go clean the streets. We'll give you pay. You would have to fill out too much paperwork, and it would be too difficult.
Well, I think we have too many moralistic authoritarians who want to punish people, and they're not actually interested in doing what's better. They're not interested in helping. They're not interested in making it better. They just want to punish them for not acting and behaving in the way that these people think they should behave and act in. And that infuses all of our politics.
Bring us home.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to Dr. Drew the other day, and he said penitentiary. It used to be penitence, where we would take them into our system if they broke the law, and you would reform them and rehabilitate and bring them back out and to be productive members of society. And now we just throw them in prison and throw away the key.
Yeah, and we have private prisons and all kinds of other stuff for profit, which is completely bonkers. But that's a whole other topic that we will also try to get to next week. Okay, final clip. Here we go. Sex is exercise, in case you didn't know it. A new study out of the University of Quebec at Montreal took a look at sex as a form of exercise, and they compared sex to jogging, walking uphill, and playing tennis. They looked at 21 young straight couples, so I'm not sure what this means for gay sex. They had them jog on treadmills for 20 minutes while researchers monitored their energy expenditure in order to provide a comparison for the physical demands of sex. And then, if you're wondering how they gauged how many calories they burned during sex, the scientists gave volunteers an unobtrusive armband to monitor the exertion and the calories that were burned during sex. According to the study, sex is the equivalent of playing doubles tennis or walking uphill. Okay, pretty good. Sex burned 4 calories per minute for men and 3 minutes for women during sessions that ranged from 10 to 57 minutes, including foreplay. The average was 25 minutes. Men burned about 9 calories per minute jogging, and women about 7. So obviously the first question here is, how important is sex to your physical fitness? Do you make it part of your workout routine?
No, I do not consider it like, oh, I had sex with my husband last night. That's like going to the gym. I'm going to skip it tonight. First of all, who paid for this report? Who paid for the research?
The fine people that fund the University
It's
of
almost
Quebec
like people realizing, wow, McDonald's is bad for you. Really, sex? Of course you're going to burn some calories. You're sweating, your heart beats up. do we really need to know that it's 4 calories per
somebody
minute?
obviously wanted to actually quantify and put some numbers to it. I mean, we've known this before, but this is a new and ingenious way
Do I need to know that having sex is like playing doubles tennis? Do I need to know that? No, I probably
don't. You really hate the people that came up with this study.
Well, I just think it's a study that, you know, can you put this money towards finding a cure for cancer?
Oh, come on.
I mean, you know what I mean?
We need these studies.
Well, see, now I didn't look at who actually funded the study, but I wouldn't be surprised if folks like, say, Viagra use these results to say, see, you know, this is like your gym membership.
Yeah. Is this one of these things that we're so afraid to talk about sex, but if we weren't afraid to talk about it, people would be having more sex and maybe being healthier because of these benefits in case you don't have access to a tennis court.
I just don't really see people using it for that. That's a great, that would be wonderful.
So now you're both married. If your husband came home and said, you know, I ate like crap today and I just feel I don't feel great and I don't want to go to the gym. It's cold out and blah, blah, blah. You know, can we do it for a couple hours? Would you see that as
a couple hours?
Oh, God.
All right, how long? What are we talking about? 15? Will you give him 15 minutes?
Well, certainly you probably wouldn't be laying down doing it, you know, the old-fashioned way, because if you need to burn some calories, you're not going to the gym. You better get up and start moving around.
Well, you could let him do all the work. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's probably why men burn a few more calories than women, because guys are doing most of the work. But you're crazy. First of all. But, you know, come on, people. You should be having sex for enjoyment. There's so many other things than just burning calories. It makes you feel better. It clears your mind. You know, they say orgasms promote good health and feeling better.
If this helps folks that were maybe on the edge there and we're not sure they wanted to participate in this, if that helps them, then by golly, honey, more power to you.
If the Taliban or Al-Qaeda were having more sex, they would probably want to kill people less because they'd be happier. They're satisfied and calm. They have they can be
well, you know, Bill Maher has said many times that in these countries that repress all this sex stuff, all you're doing, you're creating fertile ground for terrorism because you're denying them basic.
I've been in these countries. I've been to Afghanistan and Pakistan and most of the Middle East, and you see it. You're walking down, and I'm covered modestly, and they're still, you see it in their eyes. They almost don't know, they're looking at you. Remember a cartoon and you look at an animal, but you just see the chicken and the meat with the bones. That's what I feel like they're looking at. But you feel the angst and the anger almost, you know. And I'm just thinking, God, if you got laid, you would just feel so much better. I mean, you're thinking that. Honestly, it's true.
So why, with all the information we have, and everyone has, you know, Twitter and all that, even just last night, the Supreme Court in India outlawed gay sex. So why do things still keep moving backwards? India is a pretty Western country, even though it's in that part of the world. So why do things still move backwards?
Religion.
It's just.
I mean, basically, there's that's the foundation of all repression and suppression, pretty much.
I mean, if you look at the books on a lot of states, in a lot of states,
even in America, we still have some crazy laws.
There's still crazy, you know, sodomy's outlawed in most southern states still, and I mean, even consensual. Sex with chickens is outlawed. I mean, you know, there's still weird things on the books that people don't necessarily follow. It's like arbitrary laws.
The moralistic, authoritarian tendency in our society, I think, is partly what is behind that.
I always say, if it's behind my 4 walls of my house and I'm not hurting anybody else, just leave me alone. You can't regulate me inside my home.
You can't regulate me inside my home, a good finish. So get out there and have some consensual sodomy, you sodomites, you crazy sodomites. Leeann Tweeden, Desi Doyen, their Twitters are right down below. The subscribe button is right down below. I'm sure there's some other stuff right down below. And we will do it again next week. Okay, thanks.